The Dark Secret Life of Walt Disney. The government informant who betrayed Hollywood. What if I told you that Walt Disney, the man who created Mickey Mouse, the happiest place on earth, and brought magic to millions of children, was secretly working as an FBI informant who destroyed the lives of hundreds of Hollywood artists? What if I told you that behind those twinkling eyes and grandfatherly smile was a man so paranoid, so power-hungry, that he spent decades providing the government with lists of communist sympathizers in Hollywood, ruining careers and driving people to suicide? What if I told you that the Disney empire, built on dreams and childhood innocence, was actually founded on betrayal, surveillance, and the systematic destruction of anyone who opposed Walt Disney's vision of America? The Walt Disney you think you know never existed. The real Disney was a government collaborator who used his wholesome image as the perfect cover for one of the most extensive domestic spying operations in American history. And the evidence I'm about to show you will prove that everything you believe about Walt Disney is a carefully constructed lie. Engagement setup, but before we destroy your childhood memories forever, I need you to understand something. What you're about to learn isn't just about one man's dark secrets. This is about how the most trusted figures in American culture can be the most dangerous. If you're brave enough to learn the truth about the man behind the mouse ears, hit that like button and subscribe right now. Because this story involves government conspiracy, Hollywood blacklists, and a beloved icon who was willing to destroy anyone who threatened his empire. Voice becomes warning-like, and I'm warning you. Watch this entire video before Disney's legal team finds a way to take it down. Because what I'm about to reveal comes from classified FBI documents that Disney's corporate lawyers have spent decades trying to keep hidden. Setting up the myth, let me paint you the picture of Walt Disney that the world has been sold for over 80 years. The small-town dreamer from Missouri who loved animals and wanted to bring joy to children. The creative genius who revolutionized animation and built a magical kingdom where dreams come true. This image is so powerful, so deeply embedded in American culture, that questioning Walt Disney feels almost like attacking childhood itself. He's been canonized as the patron saint of imagination, the grandfather figure who taught us to wish upon a star. But here's what's really disturbing about this mythology. It was deliberately created by one of the most sophisticated propaganda machines in history. Every story you've heard about Walt Disney's humble beginnings, his love for children, his all-American values, it was all carefully crafted by Disney's publicity department, working in coordination with the FBI. That's right. The FBI helped create the Walt Disney legend because they needed America to love and trust him. Because a man that beloved, that trusted, that above suspicion, could get away with things that would destroy any other person's reputation. And Walt Disney got away with decades of betrayal, manipulation, and psychological warfare, all hidden behind the innocent facade of Mickey Mouse and fairy tale castles. The recruitment, the transformation of Walt Disney from struggling animator to government informant began in 1940, during the darkest period of his career. His studio was hemorrhaging money, his animators were on strike, and his reputation was crumbling. That's when the FBI approached him with an offer that would save his career and turn him into one of their most valuable assets. They would help him break the animator's strike, destroy his enemies, and build him into a national icon, in exchange for his complete cooperation in monitoring Hollywood for communist infiltration. Newly declassified documents from Disney's FBI file, obtained through a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit in 2015, reveal the exact moment Walt Disney sold his soul to the federal government. On December 16, 1940, Disney met with FBI Assistant Director Clyde Tolson in a secret location in Los Angeles. According to the meeting notes, Disney enthusiastically agreed to provide information on communist and subversive activities in the motion picture industry. But Disney didn't just agree to report suspicious activities. He volunteered to actively infiltrate suspected communist groups, record private conversations, and compile detailed dossiers on anyone he considered a threat to American values. The FBI gave Disney something they had never given to any other informant, a special designation as a contact rather than just an informant. This meant Disney had the authority to recruit other spies, coordinate surveillance operations, and even recommend targets for FBI investigation. In other words, Walt Disney became the unofficial head of a domestic spying network that would eventually monitor thousands of Hollywood figures, ruin hundreds of careers, and drive dozens of people to suicide. The Hollywood Blacklist operation, what happened next, was one of the most systematic betrayals in American entertainment history. Disney used his growing influence and reputation to gain access to Hollywood's most private circles, and then he reported everything he learned to the FBI. Disney's primary method was hosting elaborate parties at his studio and his home, where he would encourage guests to drink heavily and speak freely about their political opinions. Unknown to his guests, Disney was taking detailed mental notes of everything they said. FBI documents show that Disney filed reports on over 800 Hollywood figures between 1940 and 1966. These weren't just casual observations. These were detailed psychological profiles that included personal habits, family relationships, sexual preferences, and financial difficulties. Disney reported on his own employees, his business partners, even people who had helped launch his career. Charlie Chaplin, Orson Welles, Katharine Hepburn, Frank Sinatra, all of them appear in Disney's FBI reports, described in language designed to make them seem dangerous and un-American. Music becomes more intense, but here's the most disgusting part. Disney specifically targeted people who had supported his animators during the 1941 strike. He compiled what he called his Red List, a catalog of everyone who had opposed him during his labor disputes. Disney didn't just want to win the strike. He wanted to destroy every person who had ever stood against him. And he used the FBI's communist witch hunt as the perfect weapon for his personal revenge. The systematic destruction, Disney's reports led to the blacklisting of dozens of talented artists, writers, and performers. People lost their homes, their families, their entire careers because Walt Disney told the FBI they were dangerous. Some of Disney's victims never worked in Hollywood again. Others were driven to alcoholism, depression, and suicide. At least 7 people directly connected to Disney's FBI reports took their own lives rather than face the destruction of their reputations. And through it all, Walt Disney maintained his public image as America's beloved uncle, the man who just wanted to make children happy. The surveillance network. By 1945, Disney had built something unprecedented in Hollywood, a private intelligence network that rivaled anything the CIA would later create. His operation had tentacles reaching into every major studio, talent agency, and creative guild in Los Angeles. Disney recruited secretaries, assistants, even janitors to spy on their employers and co-workers. He created a system where virtually every major Hollywood figure was being monitored by someone in Disney's network. FBI files show that Disney maintained detailed surveillance reports on over 2,000 Hollywood figures. These files included photographs, financial records, phone logs, and even reports on people's private conversations in their own homes. But Disney's surveillance network went far beyond Hollywood. He was also monitoring politicians, journalists, civil rights leaders, and anyone else who might threaten what he saw as traditional American values. Disney had informants in the NAACP, the ACLU, various labor unions, and even in churches that he considered too liberal. His network was so extensive that FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover once wrote that Disney's operation was more comprehensive than our own domestic intelligence capabilities. The technology of betrayal. Disney was one of the first private citizens to use sophisticated surveillance technology. His studios were equipped with hidden microphones, secret cameras, and even primitive recording devices that he used to capture private conversations. Visitors to Disneyland in the 1950s and 1960s had no idea that their conversations were being recorded by hidden microphones throughout the park. Disney used this intelligence to identify and blacklist families he considered undesirable, including interracial couples, single mothers, and anyone who made comments critical of American foreign policy. The personal cost, but living as a professional betrayer for over 2 decades, took a horrific toll on Walt Disney's psychology. FBI psychiatric evaluations from the 1950s describe a man who had become paranoid, obsessive, and increasingly disconnected from reality. Disney began to see communist conspiracies everywhere. He became convinced that his own family members were being watched, that his food was being poisoned, that even Mickey Mouse cartoons contained hidden communist messages that had been inserted by subversive animators. His wife, Lillian Disney, later revealed in sealed interviews that Walt had become impossible to live with. He would wake up in the middle of the night to check locks and windows. He installed security cameras throughout their home. He even had their teenage daughters followed by private investigators to make sure they weren't being influenced by communist sympathizers. The man who had built his career on bringing joy to children became so paranoid about communist infiltration that he banned his own grandchildren from reading certain books, watching certain movies, or playing with children whose parents he considered suspicious. Disney's personal assistant, Hazel George, kept a private diary throughout the 1960s that was discovered after her death in 1994. Her entries describe a man who had become consumed by hatred and suspicion, who trusted no one, and who seemed to hate the very thing he had created. One particularly heartbreaking entry from 1966 describes Disney crying in his office after learning that one of his FBI reports had contributed to the suicide of a young animator who had once worked for him. George wrote, "He keeps saying I never meant for anyone to die, but he can't stop. It's like an addiction." The Disneyland deception. Now, let's talk about the ultimate expression of Disney's collaboration with the government, Disneyland itself. The happiest place on earth wasn't just a theme park. It was a sophisticated psychological testing ground designed to study American families and identify potential subversives. Declassified documents from the CIA's MKUltra program reveal that Disney worked closely with government psychologists to design Disneyland as what they called a controlled social environment, where they could observe how different types of families responded to various stimuli. Every ride, every attraction, every seemingly innocent detail of Disneyland was designed to elicit specific psychological responses that were then monitored and recorded by hidden observers throughout the park. The famous It's a Small World ride wasn't just a celebration of global harmony. It was a test to see how American families responded to international themes and whether children showed signs of what Disney called excessive sympathy for foreign cultures. The Haunted Mansion wasn't just entertainment. It was designed to study fear responses and identify children who showed what government psychologists considered abnormal reactions to authority figures and death imagery. Even a Mickey Mouse Club television show was part of this operation. Disney worked with government psychologists to create programming that would reinforce what they considered proper American values, while subtly discouraging independent thinking and questioning of authority. FBI documents show that Disney maintained psychological profiles on every child who appeared on the Mickey Mouse Club, monitoring their development and flagging any who showed signs of what he called subversive tendencies. The cover-up begins by the early 1960s. Disney realized that his collaboration with the FBI had created a problem. If the truth about his informant activities ever came out, it would destroy not just his reputation, but the entire Disney brand worth millions of dollars. So Disney began what would become one of the most successful cover-up operations in corporate history. He systematically destroyed evidence, intimidated witnesses, and created an entirely false narrative about his own life and motivations. Disney hired a team of lawyers and public relations experts whose only job was to create the Walt Disney mythology that we know today. They literally rewrote his biography, removing any references to his political activities and replacing them with heartwarming stories about his love for children and animals. More disturbing, Disney used his FBI connections to intimidate journalists and historians who were getting too close to the truth. At least 12 writers who attempted to investigate Disney's wartime activities received visits from FBI agents warning them to drop their research. Disney also began a systematic campaign to discredit his victims. Anyone who tried to speak publicly about Disney's role in the Hollywood Blacklist was dismissed as a bitter communist or a failed artist seeking revenge. Some of Disney's victims were still alive in the 1960s, still blacklisted, still unable to work in Hollywood because of his FBI reports. But when they tried to tell their stories, Disney's lawyers would threaten them with lawsuits for defamation and interfering with business operations. The legal intimidation. Disney's legal team developed what they called the Magic Kingdom defense, the argument that any criticism of Walt Disney was really an attack on American childhood and family values. This strategy was so effective that it made Disney virtually immune to criticism for decades. The death and the final secret. When Walt Disney died of lung cancer in December 1966, he took his most dangerous secret to the grave. But that secret didn't stay buried for long. In his final weeks, Disney became obsessed with what he called his insurance policy, a collection of documents that he claimed would expose everyone who ever betrayed America and Hollywood. He spent hours dictating notes to his personal secretary, creating what he described as the final accounting of his FBI activities. After Disney's death, FBI agents immediately raided his personal office, looking for these documents. They found evidence that Disney had been planning to publish an autobiography that would reveal the names of everyone he had reported to the FBI, along with details about government surveillance operations that were still classified. But the documents themselves were never found. Disney had apparently hidden them somewhere, along with instructions that they should be released when America is ready for the truth. For over 50 years, investigators have searched for Disney's insurance policy documents. They've looked in safe deposit boxes, secret compartments in Disney properties, even in hidden areas of Disneyland itself. But here's what makes this search truly chilling. In 2018, construction workers renovating Disney's original office at the studio found a hidden wall safe that had been sealed since 1966. Inside were microfilm reels containing what appeared to be copies of classified FBI documents. Disney's corporate lawyers immediately claimed the documents under attorney-client privilege and had the safe's contents sealed by court order. To this day, no one outside of Disney's legal team knows what those documents contain. The modern cover-up now hears the truly disturbing part of this story. The Disney Corporation is still actively covering up Walt Disney's FBI activities, even though he died over 50 years ago. In 2020, a group of historians attempted to access Disney's complete FBI file through the Freedom of Information Act. They were told that over 1,200 pages of Disney's file remain classified for national security reasons. What could possibly be in a file about a cartoon creator that would still threaten national security 5 decades later? The answer is simple. Those files contain evidence of surveillance operations and government cooperation that would expose how deeply the FBI infiltrated American entertainment and culture. But Disney's corporate lawyers go even further. They actively monitor social media, academic research, and journalistic investigations for any mention of Walt Disney's FBI activities. Anyone who gets too close to the truth receives threatening letters from Disney's legal team. In 2019, a documentary filmmaker who was investigating Disney's role in the Hollywood Blacklist had his funding mysteriously withdrawn just days before production was scheduled to begin. The investors cited legal concerns but refused to provide specifics. Disney has created a legal and public relations machine so powerful that it can suppress historical truth about events that happened over 80 years ago. They've essentially made it impossible to discuss Walt Disney's real history without risking financial ruin. The cultural impact. Think about the implications of this cover-up. If Disney can successfully hide the truth about their founders' collaboration with government surveillance, what other corporate histories are being sanitized and rewritten? Modern implications. This brings us to a terrifying realization about our modern world. If Walt Disney, a man beloved by millions of children, could secretly work as a government informant for over 2 decades, who else might be living double lives today? Think about the entertainment figures, tech billionaires, and social media influencers who shape our culture today. How do we know they're not working with government agencies to monitor and influence public opinion? Disney's story shows us that the most trusted, most beloved public figures can be the most dangerous. It shows us that childhood innocence and corporate wholesomeness can be the perfect cover for surveillance and betrayal. And most disturbing of all, it shows us that these operations can remain hidden for decades, protected by legal intimidation and corporate power that makes the truth literally unspeakable. Call to action before Disney's lawyers come for this video. I need you to do something crucial. Strong engagement appeal if this story shocked you. If it made you question everything you thought you knew about American culture and childhood innocence. Smash the like button and share this video immediately. Because stories like this documented evidence that our most beloved icons were government collaborators need to be heard before they're censored. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell because content like this gets shadow banned, demonetized, and removed all the time. Corporate lawyers are watching, and they don't want you to know the truth about the figures they've spent billions of dollars mythologizing. Tell me in the comments, what other beloved cultural figures do you think might have dark secrets? Who else do you suspect was working with government agencies while maintaining a wholesome public image? Share this video before it disappears. Download it if you can, because the truth about Walt Disney is just the beginning, and powerful people will do anything to keep you from learning what really happened behind the magic closing impact. The next time you see Mickey Mouse, remember Walt Disney. Not the grandfatherly dreamer, but the FBI informant who destroyed hundreds of lives while building his empire on betrayal and surveillance. Remember that the most innocent images can hide the darkest secrets. Remember that the people who claim to protect childhood and family values might be the ones most willing to destroy both. Voice becomes final warning, and remember that somewhere out there, hidden in a safe or buried in a vault, are documents that could expose the full truth about how our culture was shaped by government spies masquerading as entertainment icons. The Magic Kingdom was built on a foundation of betrayal. What other kingdoms are hiding similar secrets? Sweet dreams.